It's not like I should be surprised. After all, I've known Mason Lee Randolph was capable of some seriously depraved shit, but that's why I wanted him on my crew. But this is beyond depraved, and something has to be done. Mason, you all right over there? It's around midnight, and me and Mason, well, we're parked up on the levee, overlooking the Escambia River up in the Florida Panhandle, right where the buckle is on the Bible Belt, just north of ways of Pensacola. The full moon shining on the river, all full of whitecaps, overflowing after days of rain from a hurricane rolled in through here a couple of nights ago. Alberto, I think it was. The lumpy red clay, soaked through and soft, swallows my boots like a vacuum, and the smell of the damp air and the river water reminds me of summers way back when. We'd go camping along these very same banks, me and my kid sister Susie and my old man, long before the prick left us and drowned himself in cheap booze and bad drugs and unsophisticated women. So I looked over at Mason, and he's jumping around like a nervous hyena in the front of the car. He is amped to the bones, and that sucks, because I've been pulling jobs with him long enough to know it's difficult, it's damn near impossible to get through to him when he's this wired. Mason, you need to chill, son, I instruct him, and lay off that product. You gotta figure out what the fuck to do. Well, he stomps over to my ass, something fierce, catches me off guard, jams the barrel of his 9mm Glock directly into the base of my neck above my shoulder. The metal of his gun on my skin is still warm from his little adventure earlier in the evening. He stares at me. I tell you, his pupils are bursting out. Fuck him, I don't budge. Don't ever fucking tell me I need to do old-timer, he growls in my ear. And then he drops his hand with the gun to his side, rests his other hand gently on my shoulder, and chuckles. That was something back there, huh, Donnie? Well, before Mason knows it, I grab his hand off my shoulder, jam it up behind his back real good, and pitch him forward across my leg. He lands with a thud, face down in the wet grass, as I drop my knee in the small of his back and snag the gun from his hand. Mason struggles a bit before going limp. So the next time you point that at me, you better pull the fucking trigger, I warned him. Dude, what the hell? He whines through clenched teeth. I was just messing around. Oh yeah, Mason, me too. I jam my knee down a little harder. Let me up, Donnie. You gonna play nice? Let me up, bitch. I'm getting grass in my fucking mouth. I can't help but let out a little snicker. Mason, you gonna play nice? He's slow to answer. All right, get your goddamn knee out of my back. I lift my knee out of his back and stand up. Mason pushes himself off the ground and brushes off the front of his formerly white t-shirt. Now, a lovely ball-free green with accents of red clay. He gives me the hairy eyeball, and I try not to laugh as he spits out tiny bits of grass. He pauses and nods at his gun in my hand. My piece? He says. Something about his eyes give me trouble. I flip the gun flat on his side beneath my hand and hold it out for Mason. He stares at it for a moment, his face contorted in a kind of frown. Hell, I can almost hear the gears grinding in that fat head of his. He finally swipes the gun out of my hand and stuffs it in his waistband. Go get the shit out of the car, I tell him. He turns and marches towards the car like a spoiled child. But I ain't worried, he ain't going nowhere. I got the keys right here in my pocket. Now, up to this point, everything for the last 8 hours is kind of blurred. I ain't had time to process nothing, being more than a little complicated. The thing is, I never mess around with drug trades. done my share of drugs, sure, who ain't? But I never been involved in the retail end. Market is just too volatile. Makes me paranoid, especially if you're doing your own shit. You just can't trust drug dealers. Actually, burglary has always been my crime of choice. I don't see my victims, hopefully, which means I don't need my gun in the course of burglary. It's just plain dumb anyway. You get caught carrying, you can, right there, tack on 10 years to your sentence, no matter the consequences. And my biggest risk is merely financial. I'm dealing with them slimy-ass fences. The drug dealers, them greedy pricks are the bottom feeders of the criminal element as far as I'm concerned. Save, of course, your child molesters. But old Mason, he has a way of sugarcoating even the bitterest pill. And he has assured me that this deal is an in-and-out thing. A simple exchange of money and drugs. Yeah, he's on about a big story would be how we'd be sitting on Miami Beach drinking Mai Tais and chasing college gals, and I bought it. Plain and simple. Drug deals are never easy. You gotta read the other fellow. Hey, when to zig and not zag, etc. and all. And in the end, the thought of an easy score was just too great. I joined Mason in his little venture. I gave in to a thief's worst enemy, greed. And there it is. Funny, it all happened so fast, but also kind of in slow motion. One moment we're standing in a shitty dive of a hotel room, all nervous-like, hot air rank with stale cigarette smoke and cheap beer. And the next, all hell is breaking loose. Okay, firstly, Mason told me we were doing business with 2 dealers. Second, he knows I don't do business with bikers. They're even less trustworthy than drug dealers, if that's possible. So, what happens? Door opens, we walk in the room, and what do I see? 3 old boys of the notorious Sons of Jefferson bike gang. I shit you not. That wasn't good, not even horseshoe close to good. And worse yet, they were drinking on their own shit. So we're standing there in the room like a couple of rubes when Gopher, short little fire plug of a guy with ungodly bad body odor and yellow teeth and a Confederate t-shirt, done up with, brought up the matter of money. You got the cash? Wheezy little prick wasn't exactly asking. He was tweaking hard and fidgeting on the edge of the bed, which made me nervous. Nervous as a snitch in prison. He was scratching himself like a retarded monkey and constantly getting distracted by I Love Lucy on the television. Gopher's buddy was propped up next to the door like a wall of tattooed flesh. Lumbering knuckle dragger. Must have clocked in at 6'7". Name of Thor. Liked to fight. He had long black hair and wielded a pasted on grin like the Joker, at odds with, and yet strangely in sync with his demented features. He nodded towards the small backpack Mason was clutching tight to his chest. Is that it? Thor mumbled. Depends, Mason shot back. Oh, nice, Mason, very nice. Depends. What the hell was he pulling? These boys definitely don't need a reason to fuck us up. Before I could talk, the serious one dude in the chair in the corner stood up. So now he ain't said a word. The fuck you mean depends? He sounds like he's got ground up glass in his throat. The other 2 called him Fly. He wore a black leather vest, chaps, and a blue bandana folded wide over his red hair worn low just above his eyes, like them Latino gangbangers. He was a burly son of a bitch, roid muscles and veins thick as garden hose. prison forearms splashed with clean ink. Real professional shit, not that cheap-ass prison tats you can get for a can of Prino and a packet of marbles. He had fire engine red goatee and blue eyes that stared right through you. The boy reminded me of a bully who walked on me when I was in junior high. The hands need to get the shit, Mason shot back. Now, there are moments in one's life that test you. And you find out too soon what you're made of. Well, this is one of those times. Even though I was sure we were going to die, I managed to keep my shit together. I believe that's Webster's definition of grace under pressure. Bottom line was, these guys were businessmen. And after a few short moments of terse, Fly sat down, signaled for Grover to go into the bathroom. He came out with a Publix grocery bag, which he set in front of me, and rolled down the sides, which had a couple of bricks of packed white powder. Popped open a stiletto, reached in and carved out a chunk of the crystal and handed it to me. It smelled awful. A good sign. And then I bent it real good, and it snapped clean in two, like a carrot. Definitely not your bathtub ice. I looked over at Mason, smiled and nodded. Now just give them the money, I thought, and we can blow the fuck out of here. Mason unzipped the top of the backpack and reached in with his hand. He looked over at Fly, and with the seriousness of a preacher on Sunday morning said, "You guys take a check." Fly and the other two had puzzled expressions before Mason started laughing. Fly actually began to chuckle himself, and Gopher and Thor followed his lead. It seemed to break up some major tension, and even I started to laugh. Fly, shaking his head and laughing, looked over at Mason and said, "You won. Crazy motherfucker, you know that." Hell, got my vote. Mason still had his hand in the backpack and was laughing. "Oh man, you think that's crazy?" He then lifted his hand out of the backpack, holding his gun, pointing it at Fly's head. And I'll be damned if that boy didn't pull the goddamn trigger. The corner behind Fly splashed with a purple red of bone and brain matter, and then he slumped down in his chair all natural-like. Gopher and Thor must have been shocked as me as they stayed frozen in place, their eyes wide with knowledge that they may very well be taking their last breath of oxygen on God's green earth. "Fuck, Mason, what are you doing?" I managed to blurt out. Gopher was the first one to move as he launched towards the bathroom where his gun must have been. But he was far too slow as Mason squeezed off 2 rounds and hit him square in the back. Both slugs through and through with blood misting across the bullet holes in the cracked mirror. For a moment, I saw my distorted reflection, and all I could think of was that I was getting a little gray. Weird, where your head goes in times of crisis, or when boys are getting blown away. By this time, Thor had managed to pull his head out of his ass and grab his own piece, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw him raise the gun, and I instinctively swung my arm down across his. He held onto the gun and swung it and his meaty hand straight into my chest, knocking me back yonder about 3 feet with my ass flat on the floor. He leveled the gun at my head when 3 shots rang out. Boom, boom, boom! Hitting Thor in his chest, knocking him back against the wall and busting up the plaster before he slid to the floor. Crazy Joker grin and all. Mason stood still with a smoking gun in his hand. Behind him, on the television, Lucy and Ethel were made a mad dash to grab the candies off the damn conveyor belt. Now, there is no excuse for what Mason had done to them boys. It was an act of the devil, pure and simple. But what really got me was that Mason failed to let me in on his bloody little plan. And that just ain't right. I may be old school, but what he done it's some serious shit that I wanted no part of. I see Mason through the mist, walking back from the car holding the backpack. We're going to split the cash and the drugs, I say to him. And then I don't want to see you for a while. He looks at me and then down on the ground. Look at me, Mason. What's the matter? There's no cash. Never was. Remember that weekend I was in Vegas? Any doubt I had at this point that his little rip-off thing was a spur-of-the-moment thing quickly flew right out the window. He was really starting to fidget now. I looked down at the ground because I couldn't bear to look at him. Come on, Donnie, don't be like this. Say something. What do you want me to say, Mason? You just keep fucking up. I don't think you realize how bad this is. Cops don't give a shit about bikers, but that slaughter back there, that's something they can't ignore. They ain't geniuses, but hell, boy, my retarded cousin could piece this together. It's just a matter of time before they figure out, and I want to be as far away from you as possible when they do. The dumbass cops can't trace it to me, he says. Well, I ain't worried about the pigs as I'm about what those boys' friends are going to do. I think you just need to take off. Here's the keys. Take the car and the drugs. I don't give a shit. Just get the hell out of here. I thought you'd be happy, Donnie. Sure, I blew the 5 large, but I got us the shed. We can cut it up and get away with more than 5,000 grand. We'll all, be set for a long time. What do you mean by we'll all? Well, you, me, Susie, we can all take up. You ain't going nowhere near my Susie, partner. You don't think he tells her big brother everything? She showed me the bruises, man. I can almost forgive you all that other shit. Not this. Just take off. No matter what crap went down between Susie and me, she's still my kid's sister. Mason never had no close kin. And he just couldn't understand that. Look, Donnie, I don't know what she told you. Shut your ass up! Now, you're just being pathetic. I changed my mind. Leave the drugs, take the car, but leave the goddamn drugs. Now, just get out of here. I turned my back on him, and I walked over to the water with the moon all shining on it. The river's raging something fierce. Damn, I love this place. I closed my eyes, and I let the cool mist wash over me, and the water drowning out all but the sound of Mason pulling back the slide of his gun. I turn around. Your sister's always been a whiny little bitch, Donnie. He points the gun at my chest. That's why I needed to slap her around a bit. Never thought she'd go crying to you, though, the way she's always telling me what a shit you were for a brother. And personally, I always thought you were too much of a pussy to be a good crook. Never had that killer instinct. And you know what else I heard? That you got passed around good when you were in the joint up at Rayford. You didn't even fight back, did you, Donnie? Oh, Mason. I had such high hopes for you. Why couldn't you have jumped in the car and taken off? Now you ruined everything. I slowly raised my left hand, holding the magazine to his gun, as I held up my right hand with my own piece. I flinged the magazine in the river, and he checks the chamber of his gun. And I reached into my front pocket, and I pulled out a lone bullet. He looks at me. Shock, recognition, surrender, you know all of them stages. and whatnot. I let him get a good look at the bullet before I toss it at his feet. Mason doesn't go for the bullet. He doesn't even try the gun. He drops it at his feet in the wet grass, falls to his knees, and tosses me the backpack. I walk over to him, and I press the barrel of my piece against his temple. Mason, I say to him. He looks up at me, and despite his many and numerous shortcomings, or maybe because of them, I don't pull the trigger. Besides, truth be known, I never killed no one, and they ain't gonna start now. That's one thing Mason was right about. Instead, I smashed the butt of my gun down hard against the bridge of his nose. He falls back, passed out like Otis on Saturday night in Mayberry. I can see by the headlights he's bloody, but breathing. When his ass comes to quote Ricky Ricardo, he got some splaining to do to some very nasty folks, at which time I will be lounging in a casa in Mexico. His ass will wish he was dead. But that sounds like a Mason problem and not a Donnie problem. I walk over to the edge of the levee, and it starts raining. I can hear the river as it drips through the red clay, along the banks and whittles down the jagged rocks. It's like the water's cleansing me, and somehow drowning out my past. Absolution, if you will. I kind of feel like that old boy in Shawshank, you know, when he drags his ass out of that goddamn sewer pipe. I take one last look at Mason before I toss my gun in the river. I was going to have one hell of a headache. And then I pick up the backpack and I hop in the car. I'm headed south. I think I'll start in Key West. Sounds like a good place. Get lost for a while, cheap motel, bottle of Jack, and a party girl. Hell, Mason would love that. I guess he was right. Damn shame he wouldn't be here. Yeah. Real goddamn shame.